Howdy ho, Maplers, and welcome to the 28th 250. It's the edgy dragon girl, Kain. I'll start by saying I'm not the biggest fan of Kain. However, I do feel like the class has a lot of potential. It just has a few very glaring issues currently that make it so that I really don't like this class. For the gear, it's all the same stuff, meso obtained accessories. Kain is definitely not a good meso farmer, in like no sense of the word. Maybe the rates aren't terrible for reboot with the slower spawn speed, but for reg servers, Kain can 1000% not keep up with frenzied spawn. It's pretty obvious this class was never designed with spawn boosters in mind. Because despite all of the mobbing skills it does have, Kain's mobbing skills are nowhere near competent enough to keep up with the quick spawn speed of Frenzy Totem. For the gear, nothing too outlandishly good. Kain's base damages are surprisingly high. So for an archer class, it's kind of up there on Pathfinder tier in terms of damage. You're not going to really be super struggling. But your best mobbing skills are again on long cooldowns, so you're going to be defaulting back down to strike arrow and your scatter shot more often than not. And those ones are a little bit weaker, but still manageable. For the inner ability, unsure actually if I managed to roll a perfect inner. I know for Ho Young, passives +1 is actually keepable as a prime line since you get so many bonuses from it. But I'm unsure since Kain is so new, the mains of the class really haven't come together on 100% concrete what is the best inner ability between like 20 boss and passive +1. But I did happen to roll passive +1 and crit rate 20% with one miracle circulator from Fairy Bros. So you better believe I'm gonna keep that. Ideally, I'd like to have gotten 20% meso or 20 drop, heck even 20 boss to make dojo a little bit easier, but this seemed too good to pass up on. And just like Ho Young, you get a lot of bonuses from this +1 passive skill, just unsure if those bonuses are enough to make up for the difference of 20% boss. And again, with all archers, you want 20% crit as your second line. It's super good to overcap crit. For the V Matrix, oh boy. I talked about this when I was on the test server for Kain, but good fucking god, why does this class have so many skills? For your boost nodes at least, you can leave 2 of them off for the most part, but if you're bossing, you need all of your boost skills, which takes up 6 whole slots, and then on top of that, you have a ton of good 5th job skills that you ideally want, but right in its first spot, where it belongs, decent holy symbol. Fantastic skill, EXP, drop rate, couldn't beat it. 100% uptime, and we're getting the ability to put decent skills on pet auto buffs in the near future. There is no reason not to use this skill. Max it out if you can afford to, if not, it's still best in slot even at level 1. And for the boost nodes. Alright, Kain is pretty straightforward, you literally just boost everything. However, for whatever reason, they just wanted to make me upset. There are only 8 boostable skills. And to get a set of trios for 3 sets is 9 skill slots. So your last skill slot for your execute skills is literally just a burner skill and then your 2 executes. It does make it easy to get these on a single boost node because all of your execute skills fall within just 2 skills in the V Matrix. But for me personally, this is obscenely triggering because it's so wasteful. There had to have been one skill they could have keeping out just so you could have 3 complete nice sets of trios. But no, Cadena also has this problem and I don't know why. But for your most important skills, you've got Strike Arrow, Dragon Fang, Scattering Shot, and Shaft Break, Death's Blessing, and Falling Dust. These are all your mobbing skills and your bossing skills. They perform both functions, except for Death's Blessing. Death's Blessing is pretty much only bossing damage. It's what you get passively by using possession skills on bosses, and it provides the marks that you expunge using your execute skills. Pretty much you want to boost everything, so just try to get all of your possession skills on boost nodes by themselves so that you can exclude the execute skills. because really, they're not that useful for mobbing. And even without the boost nodes, the base damage on your execute skills are usually good enough to kill them, because like the 2 good execute skills for mobbing hit twice. So even with lower damage, you're still likely going to one-shot with them, so it's not that bad to keep them off. And you're going to be struggling for space on your V-Matrix non-stop, so keep them off. Unless you're bossing, keep your execute skills off. For the skills, we've got Grip of Agony. Now I like this skill and I hate this skill. I like it because, oh boy, it does a lot of damage, and who doesn't love a lot of damage? I hate this skill because I vehemently believe this does not deserve the cooldown it has. This thing should not have a 3-minute cooldown for a skill that at max lasts 15 seconds. It's like, even if this was a 2-minute cooldown, it wouldn't be that obscene for bossing damage output. This is a nice burst skill, yeah, but this is also your only summon ability for mobbing besides a Lucid Soul, and Lucid Soul damage for Bowman isn't that great, so this is pretty much your only reliable summon. And it only lasts 15 seconds. It's pretty bad. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's pretty bad. The utility on this isn't there. With its 3-minute cooldown, it's really only useful for bossing. For mobbing, you get to use it every now and again, but it's not enough uptime to be beneficial. It's pretty much just a loot timer, but it's even too slow to be a loot timer. For your burst combo, these 2 skills go hand in hand, Dragon Burst and Fatal Blitz. You use one and then the other. Always. Don't ever separate them, there's no reason to, they share the same cooldown and they do the most damage when paired together. Dragon Blitz, it's pretty much your Hurricane ability. Max cooldown time is 5 seconds, but 9 times out of 10, it's not going to last the full duration because the skill also cancels itself once it's put enough marks on the boss, or whatever enemy it's hitting. It'll auto-cancel, and then you immediately chain into Fatal Blitz to pop all of the Death's Blessing marks that Dragon Burst put on it. Together, these 2 skills are absurd. I feel like Grip of Agony has a 3-minute cooldown because of how much power is allocated to this combo. This is a 90-second cooldown burst, and it is insane burst. It is so obscenely strong. I absolutely love using this combo. If Grip of Agony had a cooldown similar to these, like 90 seconds, Kain would be one of the best bursters, probably in the game. But at 3 minutes, you're really only bursting with Dragon Burst and Fatal Blitz reliably, and you just have to save Grip of Agony until the most important burst when all the party buffs are active. You can't ever just willy-nilly throw this out for a common burst setup. And then, of course, Thanatos Descent. This is a buff skill, an additional sort of mobbing skill, and it's your iframe. This also helps generate Malice, which is super handy for bossing, where Kain really doesn't have problems generating Malice for mobbing. Like, they've managed to get the feel of Kain's mobbing down almost perfect. You never really struggle for Malice ever. But in bossing, when you're actively like spamming out your possession skills to get as much DPS as possible, you definitely need these Malice generators. Like, even having 2 of them with Thanatos and your hyper skill, it's still a struggle to keep up your Malice in bossing if you're using everything on cooldown. But this skill is pretty handy. It does bonus damage against normal monsters, which is why it's sort of a mobbing skill, but it's also sort of really terrible at mobbing. It's okay. It's not great. It's 30% damage for 35 seconds, which I guess that helps for mobbing. But it really only attacks 3 times, and it's just following the trend with Kain. All of your skills just do the least amount of mobbing possible to be qualified as a mobbing skill and nothing more. So it really feels bad for mobbing. Using the iframe portion and the FMA portion of Thanatos is pretty nice for mobbing. On frenzied speed, it clears 2 spawn waves of mobs, which is really handy, but then you run into the issue the cooldown is fairly long, so you're not going to be using it that often for mobbing. Similar to Grip of Agony, it's nice, but it's not doing enough to keep Kain in the runnings for a good mobber on frenzied speed. But this class was never designed with spawn boosters in mind. Like, I was watching a bunch of reboot players play this class, and it looks far more enjoyable to play Kain on a slower and lower spawn speed than it does to play on Frenzy. I feel like my opinion's sort of tainted because of how crazy hectic and like 0 downtime there is to Kain while mobbing on Frenzied spawn. But that's just the curse of playing in reg servers. If you want the best rates, you gotta deal with frenzied speed. And then of course for the generic skills, you've got Guided Arrow. Super handy if it's 1 or 2 shotting. Throw it on if you can. It's not the most important thing, but for Kain specifically, again, since your mobbing capabilities are pretty limited, if you're strong enough, absolutely put this on as soon as you can. It's another great source of stacking up combo kills, which surprisingly, and sort of unsurprisingly, once you think about it, Kain is really good at stacking combo, so you absolutely want to be using an run link here. You're gonna be stacking combo quick. And this is just another additional source of stacking combo, along with your Dragon Fangs, all of your mobbing skills hitting so few mobs. You stack combo quick, where you don't get EXP from actual map clear, you're making up that EXP with a ROM link, at least sort of. Then of course, True Arachnid Reflection, you get it for completing the Will storyline. Decent mobbing, decent bossing, throw it on when you get it, or if you have a slot for it. Again, Kain has oodles and canoodles of skills. I didn't put this on until 240, because I needed the extra space for my EXP node. Character building's just better than the will skill for EXP rates, unfortunately. But decent sharp eyes. Kain doesn't have a sharp eyes skills of its own, so you're going to be using decent sharp eyes. Bonus crit rate, bonus crit damage. It's great. Extra great for archers, because overcapping crit rate is beneficial. And then, of course, your execute trios. Well, duo. Phantom Blade and Tearing Knife, and Chain Sickle and Poison Needle. Since you only need to get 2 skills, it is obscenely easy to get this set of boost nodes. It just feels so entirely wasteful, because you just have that 3rd skill that has already been full boosted up here. I guess for newer players this might be beneficial, because then you could like throw Falling Dust on both of these if you can't max out your boost nodes, and that'll give a lot of cheeky levels to Falling Dust to make sure it's as strong as it can possibly be. But for me, and for Kain players who can max out their boost nodes, it just looks and feels bad. And of course, Vicious Shot. Overcapping crit rate is super beneficial because of the skill. Gives a ton of damage for your burst. Feels really good. It's not the most important thing. I put it on because I'll be doing dojo in a bit, but ideally character building would be the last one. It's just the best EXP special node for reg servers and for reboot since we have spawn boosters. Now for the training. So training is a little bit different now. Since the Neo update, the EXP curve changed, and with the EXP curve change, we also got improved EXP from monsters around your level. So now, ideally, you want to stay within the 5 level range of the mobs you're fighting at, because if you're within 5 levels of the mob, and by that I mean like plus or minus 2, you get 10 and 20% EXP bonus, and that is multiplicative bonus from those mobs. So you really want to stay within that 5 level range of the mobs so that you're getting the most EXP possible. So for 200 till 205, for these super early levels, it doesn't matter as much. You're going to be blitzing through these levels anyway, but going forward after Vanishing Journey, we'll be sticking more so around the mob levels. For Vanishing Journey though, Eastern Cave Path 2, below the cave. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Kain's not the greatest mobber in the universe, but luckily enough for Kain, this map is okay. The platforms are just short enough that your strike arrow isn't going to be struggling too much here. Another small nitpick, if you are on Frenzied spawn and you load into a map with an anti-AFK mob, you're going to have to attack 2 to 3 times before you kill it. Super annoying. But For this, it's very simple. Just jump and strike arrow across the bottom. A nice little combo for mobbing when you're using your exceed skills is literally just use possessed falling dust, instantly dash, then use your fourth job execute, dash again, third job execute, dash again, second job execute, and you'll just glide seamlessly from one side of the map to the other. Execute skills aren't the greatest for mobbing, they weren't designed to mob, but they do mob fairly good, and as long as you're hitting a mob with your execute skills while you're gliding, your glide gets reset. So, just flash jump back and forth here, kill mobs. If you have Grip of Agony or Lucid Soul, just drop her on the right. These levels are gonna go quick, you don't need either of those. Just make sure you got EXP buffs, and you'll get to 205, and into the first actual training areas in Reverse City. Significantly better EXP from here on out. Now, for 205 until 209, specifically 209 because that's when you get in range of the hidden research train, T-Boy's Train 1 is actually now better EXP. Since you're within these mobs levels, you're getting 20% multiplicative EXP. So, that's great, because this map is obscenely easy. It's literally just strike arrow, flash jumping left and right. Let's grab the rune to get rid of that notification. And if you want to clear the mobs on this side, possession falling dust. You can use your execute skills to dash along, get nice and fancy, get used to that combo because it's really the only one you got. I would say just use either possessed shaft break or possessed falling dust to clear that top. I really don't like possession for like scatter shot. On frenzied speed, it is the least useful possession attack. Possession strike arrow mobs better than it does, so really, these levels are going to be super easy. You can honestly just ignore that top platform, let your dragon fangs take care of it. I forgot to toggle those on. Remember to put those on when you go trading. Your 2 toggle abilities. Your dragon fangs or just your possession skills will be enough to clear the top. And the EXP here is actually pretty legit now that you're getting the 20% multiplicative bonus. But then, once you're 209, you're now closer in level to the hidden research train mobs, and you're falling out of range of the bonus EXP for this map. Then you head on in to the hidden research train, where you just keep following that bonus EXP train. For this map, it's much the same, just a little bit more effort on your possession skills. Either use possession shaft break or possession falling dust to clear the mobs higher up on the map. You can use your execute combo to glide back to the other side of the map. Throw in your hyper chasing shot whenever it's off cooldown. It's fairly handy. It's not the greatest skill in the universe because it does have a fairly long cast animation to it. So it breaks up the flow of training for Kain quite a bit, but it is more useful than it isn't because again, since it's another single source of mob kills, it's helping stack up your Aron Link fairly quick. I'll emphasize again, you absolutely want Aron Link for Kain. Your EXP rates without it aren't that amazing. But this map is going to give you pretty darn good EXP, and you can get right on in at 215 into Yum Yum Island. Now again, following the plus or minus 2 theory, your next training area for 215 until 218 is not the hidden Iliad field. Not yet! Hold your horses, you gotta stay within your level range. You're now going to the Mushbad Forest 6. For most classes, this is the simplest Mushbad map that isn't one of the hidden maps to rotate. It's literally just 3 flat platforms with some gaps in between them. So just mob the best you can here. You can honestly sit in the middle and make use of Possession Shaft Break to grab mobs from below you and actually make some use of Possession Scatter Shot in this map if you don't want to move around too much. However, keep in mind your Falling Dust is not going to clear that bottom. If you have a Lucid Soul, you can also drop her at the bottom to assist your mobbing. Drop out your Sentient Arrow, or your Guided Arrow rather, if you have it on your V-Matrix already. And you'll just get through these levels fairly quick with the new bonus EXP. And then you can move on into the Hidden Iliad field at 218 until 222. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Hidden Iliad field is just so obscenely good. The map layout is perfect for almost every class, the spawn density is fantastic, and with spawn boosters, it just keeps getting better from there. Flash jump along the bottom, use your possession skills and all of your actual malice generators to mob the top platform, or if you have it, you can drop a Lucid Soul up here to benefit your mobbing. It's not necessary. You can also, if you want to do a loot cycle, just drop your Agony in the middle, and then all you would have to worry about is the bottom. Agony is very good at mobbing while it's up, so probably set it in the most densely compact area you can, so you can get around the map in the 15 seconds that it's available to actually loot everything. But these levels are so obscenely fast now. You'll be getting in to Latchlin, no problem. Dude, the new curve, as well as having 20% bonus EXP for being within that plus or minus 1 level of the mobs you're fighting, makes training in these early levels so crazy fast. We've also got the dailies buff coming up in a few months now that will make dailies as well as Monster Park give more EXP for at least one character per day. So there is a legitimate training guide that could be made for just doing your dailies and like coin capping in the near future, and you'll be able to get to 250 without too much struggle. It's a great future to look forward to. But for 220 until 230, you want to stick it out in Rev 3. Now you will be over leveling on these mobs, you won't be getting the bonus EXP, but really there isn't any amazing map for this level range that you can go to stay within the bonus EXP range where you would actually benefit from the EXP. And as well, personally, I think Rev 3 is probably the best feeling map Kain had while I was training to 250, because it just works, right? Strike Arrow can double plat everything here, just use the possession skill on the house, pretty much full clears it. Prioritize always using Falling Dust on the house since it's your best mobbing skill, as well as just your best possession mobbing skill. Just drop it when you got it, and then just keep flash jumping from corner to corner, using a possession skill on the sides. Strike Arrow shows, or not Strike Arrow, Shaft Break shows some of its weakness in this area because of how many mobs there are. It is very hard to actually line up the pull portion of Shaft Break to end up where you want it to end up. It will more than often just hit too many mobs and stop in place well before it gets to your preferred location. But you'll get used to it the more that you play with it, and this place actually gives fairly decent EXP, surprisingly. Kain's EXP rates definitely aren't the best, but Rev 3 was a nice little reprieve from bad rates. It was around average EXP, and that's the best you can really look forward to on Kain. Unfortunately, with Frenzied Spawn, it was not ever in its wildest dreams supposed to be able to handle this much spawn speed. But for 230 until 235, it's the Earth Spirits. I'm really glad the new EXP changes went through because I've been looking for reasons to use this map, because ever since it got buffed, it's actually really good. It's extra good for reboot specifically, since you can clear the map on Kishin speed a lot faster. On Frenzied speed, it's still a bit too big for like 90% of the classes in the game, but for someone like Kain, or for a Night Lord and Nightwalker, anyone who has like additional sources of mobbing, Adele also falls into the category, as you can see by all the people actually training in this map. It is still really good. You'll stack up around Link here pretty quickly as well. For this, ideally you'd want to Lucid Soul so you can drop her in the middle, because even with your possession skills, there's too many mobs clumped up around the middle. Only Possessed Falling Dust has enough mobbing power to actually clear everything there. But this map is very simple. You literally just flash jump and use Strike Arrow for everything on these corners. You hope that Strike Arrow's extra hit clears the mobs that it can't actually reach, and then you just use possession skills in the middle of the map. You can use your execute combo, but it's not ideal because, again, the skills weren't designed to mob, so they don't have the best mobbing power. For your Agony, you just drop it in the middle where Lucid Soul is and continue flash jumping left and right. Use all of your cooldown skills. You can use Unseen Sniper as a mobbing tool. From the middle, it hits everything around it, but it doesn't mob well enough to warrant using on cooldown as a mobbing skill. So pretty much just stick to using Strike Arrow for everything that isn't the middle, and then for the middle, either Falling Dust or Shaft Break, since those are really the only two mobbing skills that can handle as many mobs are in the middle there. You can use Scatter Shot as a mobbing skill on that map, just the unpossessed version of Scatter Shot. It feels okay. The possessed Scatter Shot isn't great. It helps stack up your Aron Link, but it really isn't great. Any mobbing skill that has a hard set limit to how many mobs it can hit isn't ideal on Frenzied speed. But that place will get you nice and quick on into your next training area. At 235, you'll want to be transitioning to LP1. Now for LP1, since there are 2 mobs, as you can see, the level ranges are split, but once you get outside of the bonus EXP level range for Earth Spirits, even only having 50% of the new mobs in your level range for bonus EXP is beneficial. So you'll want to be swapping here at least 235, at most 236. For this area though, it's more of the same, it's just a more compact map. If you have a Lucid Soul, drop it on a side, and then you just flash jump through, using your possession skills on the corner of the map. You can use Scatter Shot a lot more in this map, since Scatter Shot can actually get to the top of the map, but it's not the most important thing in the universe, since you can actually make full use of your execute combo here. At the top of Falling Dust, you can just execute combo dash all the way to the other side of the map, and then just shaft break back. Possession skill, either Falling Dust or Shaft Break, clear the side, and then you just flash jump around. You're not really clearing off the top of the map too much, even with the 50% bonus range from the hyper passive. On Dragon Fang, it's not enough to reach unless you're at the very, very apex of your jump, and something that's so situational as that doesn't really warrant the hyper point, so you'll just have to get used to not full clearing the map on Kain, because really, you're not going to be full clearing the map on Kain. Not on Frenzied spawn. Unless you're super turbo funded and your Lucid Soul's fully one-shotting, it's just, it's a useless effort. It's futile. But that will get you on into 240 really quickly. You can stay there until 245 because your next options aren't great. MTS3 would be really nice if it wasn't full of botters 24/7, so we really can't use that as an option currently. So that means your next training area is in the 240s, which is okay because once you're 242, you'll get outside of the LP1 bonus EXP range, and then you'll want to transition into your next areas regardless, which I would recommend PD1 since it's simpler. However, it does get worse rates than PD4. But I'll show off PD1 because it is simpler and it's nice. It's not nearly as tedious as the PD4 rotation. For this, Lucid Soul, Will Skill if it's off cooldown, put them both on the top because you're just going to be hop, skipping, and jumping around the bottom. Now, if you're strong enough that your Dragon Fangs do one-shot the mobs here, you can literally just strike arrow along the bottom and let your guided arrow clear up any stragglers that you're not getting. Very relaxing, literally just flash jumping left and right. If your Lucid Soul isn't one-shotting, just make sure you use your Possessed Falling Dust in the middle there, since it will get all the way to the tippity top. And of course, when it's off cooldown, drop down your Agony here in the middle. Try to make it so that you're not overlapping Agony with the Will skill, since of course Agony's going to be full clearing anything that the Will would hope to kill. And you want to make the most out of every one of your mobbing skills on Kain, because individually your mobbing skills ain't much. But this map is super relaxing, however, it doesn't get the best rates, unfortunately. That one falls on PD4. And I'm very upset with Kain. This is the first class where I have not enjoyed training in PD4, because the optimal rotation I found is pretty obnoxious. Lucid Soul and Will Skill go on this platform here on the right. You're ideally going to be one-shotting with them, but if you're not like me, they're used specifically just to aggro those mobs back into your range. You want to start on the portal, drop down Falling Dust, or not Falling Dust, drop down with Shaft Arrow, and then when you're at the bottom, flash jump once. I have not gotten the feel down for the perfect flash jump range. I always overshoot or undershoot this portal, but the rotation is literally just dropping down, flash jumping, hoping to God you line up with the portal, and then either using Possessed Falling Dust or Possessed Shaft Break to clear the mobs to the right of the portal. And this is unfortunately where you'll get your best EXP rates in Zealous. It's quite a bit higher than everything else that I tested. It's very consistent, but it is also consistently infuriating. Potentially just a me issue, but I've never gotten the feel down to get the flash jump just ever so right to always land on this portal. I'm always like 1 or 2 pixels too far or too short, and having to correct yourself every few seconds on your rotation just to keep up your mobbing efficiency is very obnoxious. But the EXP rates are worth it. It's like 112 mil per hour while you're within the EXP range, which is the highest rate I got for Kain. while I was within mob EXP ranges. So it's definitely worth it if you have the patience for hitting that portal on every rotation. It's very similar to the rotation I used in Slurpy Forest Depths way back when on my dual blade, but I was much more okay with doing it there when levels only took like an hour. Doing it for levels that take 7 to 8 hours each is not fun. It's like psychological torture every time you don't make the flash jump just right. It's almost worse actually getting the flash jump right, because then you're like, oh, I finally got it, and then you start missing it again. Oh, it was painful. These last few levels on Kain really came to show me just how ill-fit Kain is to handle spawn boosters. Again, this isn't much of a problem for Reboot. It's like the few streamers I've been watching play Kain in Reboot. The class actually looks pretty enjoyable on Kishin or Wild Totem spawn speeds. It's just for the maximum spawn rate we have in Reg server with Frenzy Totem, it starts falling apart, and if it starts falling apart quick. For the bossing for Kain, I really don't have too much of a problem with it. Again, at the start I said Grip of Agony does not deserve a 3-minute cooldown. It's not that oppressively strong as a bossing skill. As well, it also has its own mini mechanic with death throws, which, hey, if you ever go do flag race or if you ever disconnect, you lose all of these, by the way, so you have to then go and stack this stupid skill up again, because you only use this skill when it's at 15 death throws, because its duration is directly linked to how many stacks of death throws you have. So it's pretty obnoxious if you're being a good guildie and doing flag race, or if you just happen to DC while training and this comes off cooldown. Yeah, you can't just use it yet. You gotta stack it back up. For the bossing itself, it's a lot less complex than I thought it would end up being when I first played it on the test server. Again, the test server isn't the ideal way to learn a class. You don't want to jump into the deep end, especially with a class as complex as this. But the more that I've played with Kain, the more I've gotten a feel for the bossing. It's still not ideal. I feel like I'm watching my skill cooldowns more than I'm watching the actual boss. Maybe that's something you'll get used to more the more that people play this, but there's so much to keep track of. It's not quite like Evan and Mert here, where you're playing two characters at once. But since your best damaging abilities are directly tied to their ammo systems, you want to be using Falling Dust as much as humanly possible. And then while bossing, you want to be using Possessed Falling Dust as much as humanly possible, because if you're ever not using them, that's a straight up damage loss. Don't want that. But if you do get the flow down for it, it's just pretty hectic. It's smooth. Like, there's no lingering animations for this class like a Thunderbreaker. You can just spam between all of your possession skills and they'll go off once you get cartridges for them. So it feels really smooth. It's just beyond hectic. It feels more like button mashing than it does actual control of a character. Working around your Death's Blessing is actually far easier than I would expect it to be, because as much Malice Generation as your burst gives you, your burst is on fairly long cooldowns. So for a majority of bossing for stuff like Dojo, you're literally just going Malice Charge to Malice Charge. You're struggling to maintain even enough Malice to use one possession ability, let alone using 15 to build up max Death's Blessing stacks. That's just not going to happen. More often than not, if bosses are moving around a lot, you're not even going to get 4 Death's Blessing marks on a boss. Like, you just don't generate enough Malice consistently. Even with the passive generation, it's still pretty rough in bossing. You have to pay attention to it and make sure every single one of your possession skills isn't being wasted. Because when you're not using one of these skills, you're going to be using Strike Arrow. So Strike Arrow is just like your default skill that you're going to be tapping while bossing. So you can just interchange your actual Malice generators when they come off cooldown for their charges. But you're also trying to make sure you're using your possessions as soon as you got a possession charge. You want to be using a possession ability, but that often leads to a situation where you just accidentally use possession on Strike Arrow, which is very far from ideal when it comes to damage output. Like, your priority is always going to be Falling Dust, Shaft Break, Scatter Shot, and then Possession Strike Arrow for damage output. That's the last skill you want to be using for your damage output, and you'll just accidentally use it constantly, which feels real bad, especially when you're struggling to generate malice. But there's definitely a flow to it. You just use possession skills, then execute skills, and then just keep spamming your non-possession versions to build up malice, and then rinse repeat the cycle. It's a nice thing that I've figured is just watch your Poison Needle and your Falling Dust possession cooldown. Those are almost in line perfectly with when you'll have enough malice to start generating and then use all of your execute skills on cooldown again. That nice, I think they're 12 or 15 seconds, that little gap of time is almost perfect to ensure that you have enough malice to get through all of your important skills and then use all of your important execute skills to pop those Death Blessing marks. As well, for bossing, you want to be using Unseen Sniper on cooldown, especially for single target bosses. I mean, these skills do mob as well, but ideally you want to just be hitting a single target. These do a fuck ton of damage. Like, just using Unseen Sniper and then Possessed Unseen Sniper back to back is like 2 full rotations of Possessed and Execute skills worth of damage. It's obscenely strong. Of course, just use your burst off cooldown for your Dragon Burst and your Fatal Blitz. Again, these combined do insane damage. Think like Worm King's Breath for Evan. It's a lot of damage, even more than Worm King's Breath, honestly. It's just a nice comparison since it's a combo set of burst skills. But holy moly, using these 2 skills feels so good. And the fact that Dragon Bliss sets you up with pretty much max Death Blessing marks so that they can all be popped by Fatal Blitz just further emphasizes how good these 2 skills are for burst, and the fact that they also mob at the same time means that for stuff like Punch King or the Magna statue, these are super good. A small nitpick with Death Blessings. Death Blessing is a debuff that will appear above bosses' heads. That's how you can see how many marks you have, although 9 times out of 10, unless you're using a transparent damage skin and full transparency on your skills, you're not even going to see it. So just get used to counting out your Death Blessings in your head so that you can make sure you're getting all of them popped with your execute skills. But another problem with them, for whatever reason, Death Blessing as a debuff does not take priority over any other debuff in the game. I mean, literally any other debuff in the game. For stuff like GPQ or for hard bossing, where you're actually in a party situation with multiple classes stacking debuffs on a boss, you will literally not be able to see how many marks you have on a boss. I don't know how something so important to Kain's damage output is literally obscurable just by having other people debuffing the boss target. I don't know why, at least for Kain specifically, that these marks do not take priority and show up on top of the boss's debuff list. It's super annoying just to not know how many Death Blessing marks you have on that target. It's pretty bad. Kain also falls into the same category as like Ho Young when it comes to bossing. There are so many flashy animations going on with Kain, and so frequently, as well as like your damage numbers just overflowing on top of a boss, you can very easily lose the boss that you're fighting behind all of your attacks. So for actual hard bossing situations, you'll want to be turning on transparent damage skin if you have access to it, full transparency on your abilities, and even then Kain can be pretty obnoxious. Like, your Grip of Agony, even on max transparency, is very obstructive. It's literally Ho Young tier. You just make bosses disappear behind all of the damage and damage lines that you're pumping out. It feels really good to be doing all those damage lines, but like the quality of life of all of those damage lines and all of these flashy animations is pretty low. Really, the only problems I have with Kain currently are, well, for its bossing specifically, are I feel the damage output is a little too low. I think Korea is also in the same idea because they are buffing Kain's damage numbers in the future, so it's not going to feel as weak. Just like transitioning from Wind Archer to Kain, it gave me a good sense of like where Kain falls in the hierarchy of damage output, and Kain is significantly lower than Wind Archer currently. Like, a little bit of that can be it can be just me being bad at the class early on, but after my first few weeks of dojo runs, I pretty much got the rotations down, just making sure I'm always using my possession skills and then immediately executing them to use all the Death Blessing marks I made, build up Malice, rinse, repeat, full burst on cooldown. Even with that down, I failed to get top 30% for dojo until my very last week of Kain. This is the first character I have ever not gotten dojo rankings with after 220. So, it's safe to say, since this is the exact same set of gear that I used on my Wind Archer, barring the weapon secondary and emblem, but those aren't even too much of a difference. Well, I guess they're a little bit different since my Cygnus Knight secondary is pretty jacked, but the fact that I wasn't even able to get top 30%, which, think back, I was getting top 30% every week on Demon Avenger, Dark Knight, and those two were significantly weaker in funding. It's definitely low in the damage department. In the quality of life department for bossing, it's very high. There's something special to be said about how obscenely powerful 100% super stance is for all of your execute skills while bossing. It's super, super strong as a hyper passive, and it pretty much guarantees you're never going to get jostled around by like Lotus or Magnus ever again, and that's super good for quality of life. For its mobility, Kain is extremely mobile. A small nitpick with the mobility. Kain's rope lift. I love how it works. I hate one very specific and very annoying function of it. The only way to cancel your rope lift after you've started pulling yourself up is to press the rope lift key again. Literally every other rope lift in the game can be cancelled with a flash jump or a dash skill or just literally anything, but only the rope lift itself can cancel the pull animation for Kain. And that just feels so awkward that it's the only one that's singled out in being different. Can't tell you how many times I've just wanted it to let me flash jump out of it, because flash jumping out of rope lift just feels so natural at this point, since, again, literally everyone but Kain can do it. So that's a small nitpick for the mobility, but you get used to it the more that you use it, and the pros outweigh the con for Kain's rope lift. It's honestly insane how fun it is to use. Mobility's great, the mobbing is fantastic with it since you can attack while you're going up. Feels amazing. Oh boy. Kain was a very mixed bag. I do feel like me playing in Reg server hindered my enjoyment of Kain significantly. Like, everything I've seen from KMS players and from Kain players in like Reboot with lower spawn speeds looks significantly more fun than what I just leveled to 250. This class, as well as all classes really designed by Korea, were not designed ever with the intention to train on these spawn speeds, and it's just Kain is the unlucky one to fall the lowest on the totem pole for transitioning over to GMS. It's a fun class, but it doesn't handle Reg server that well. As well, currently, I can't in good conscience recommend Kain because manual possession is by far the worst idea Nexon has ever had for a new class. There is nothing fun, beneficial, or creative about having manual possession with no alternative to lock it onto an automatic state like arc bullets. It is obnoxious. It artificially inflates how many keys you have to press, while Kain already has some of the highest APM for any class in the game for mobbing, and it is just beyond fucking tedious. It's extra bad because it's ping dependent, so for me, with my god-awful ping, it's super, super annoying trying to specifically and precisely time out skills in their possessed forms while mobbing, especially for PD4. Like, ideally, I would like to use Possession Falling Dust, then Possess again, hit the portal, and then drop down with a Possess Strike Arrow. That would be better EXP. But because of my ping, and because this isn't a client-sided ability, and there's no fucking automatic mode for possession, I literally cannot do that. There is too much delay between my possessed falling dust or possessed shaft break going off that I literally physically cannot use possession again without intentionally slowing down my rotation and making it worse EXP. Like, I have friends who have significantly better ping than me, and they can do it, and it pisses me off. Possession needs to have a automatic toggle, similar to how Arc has an automatic toggle for the bullets. There is no doubt in my mind that this class would feel 100% better having an automatic toggle. Not even just for mobbing, for bossing it would feel better. Because if you don't have to worry about constantly pressing your possession key, you're not going to be accidentally using your marks. Make it so that if, like, fuck it, just make Strike Arrow the only one you have to possess manually because it has no cooldown. That would already make it significantly better, because then you're not accidentally wasting the malice that you're generating on this weakest possession skill. Oh, I fucking hate that it's full manual on possession. It's tedious, it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't make the class more enjoyable to play. It's just fucking bad. Like, Kain already has the most active skills in the game. Probably. I'd have to count Kadena's skills, but Kain is at 27 active keys when you have all of your abilities on. I'm level 250 and I don't even have all of my active abilities yet for my V Matrix. There are 27 active abilities for Kain, and they make you fucking spam possession for 4 of them. It's so tedious. I don't know who thought it was a good idea, and I think it's by far the worst thing Kain has. I held off talking about it until the end of the video because I knew I would get heated about this. It is so fucking bad that it's fully manual. It is actively deteriorating my enjoyment of this class. Like, especially once I got into the 240s and had to transition to Celis with its tedious mobbing. The fact that I physically could not use the class to the full extent that I wanted to because of this fucking toggle that doesn't exist is super obnoxious. And it would just be straight up beneficial for this to be a passive skill. Just make it so that if you want to use Possessed Strike Arrow, that's the only one that requires you manually using Possession. Because you have active cooldown indicators on your possession cooldowns for literally all of your malice generators. So you don't even need to pay attention to your malice gauge for the most part, aside from using your possessed skills. And if you're already seeing, hey, the cooldown's coming off, all you have to do is see, yep, got enough malice to use a skill. Bop, use the key on cooldown, and you'll get the possessed version to come out once it's up, if you could actually set this to be automatic cast. I hate manual possession on Kain. Like, I can overlook how Kain doesn't transition to, like, reg server training well, because it was never designed to. But I can't overlook intentionally making the class worse and less fun to play by making you spam a fucking possession skill that isn't even client-sided for every one of your abilities. I cannot overlook that. And I would not recommend Kain until they add automatic possession as a toggle. Because honestly, if they don't, they're fucking trolling. It is the most fucking borderline useless thing to make players just spam their possession key. It's just tedious. There's no benefit to it. But before I go on an hour-long rant, that's been Kain. Yeah, it was a fairly fast 250. It did fall in between the Kana Compendium, my Kana's 250 guide, and my Nightwalker guide, so it's a little bit slower than it should have been. Kain is pretty fast. It did have its own EXP title, so that was artificially boosting its rates a little bit, but for the most part, I enjoy Kain. It just has a really big glaring issue, and the fact that it wasn't designed for reg server spawn speeds, which probably means I won't ever pick this class up as a main. I enjoyed my time with Kain, but I am very glad that it's over finally. And I can transition into the next 250, which is gonna be Fire Poison. we're getting back to an explorer mage. Can't do ice lightning just yet. We gotta do the worst mobbers and then the best mobbers. I've already finished bishop, so it can't possibly be as bad as bishop, right? Right? But until then, this has been Kain. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about Kain, about my journey of getting all characters, or all classes rather, to 250, or about playing MapleStory in general, feel free to ask down below. I make it a point in all of these videos to answer any and all questions you guys might have, because I love talking about this game. Even the bad parts. I like yelling at this game too. But, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.